Welcome to the official first episode of the Student Founder podcast series, a platform and community focused on entrepreneurship, where we bring on Australian entrepreneurs and put them in the spotlight that they deserve. In this podcast, we bring on experts in business to talk about strategies for founders and business owners, investors to understand on how to raise capital, and founders to talk about what it's like running, starting, and managing startups from the ground up. If you're a startup founder and think that you have a unique and interesting story to tell about your experiences in this space, make sure to reach out to us. We'd love to have you on the podcast. With that being said, subscribe if you like this content and enjoy the first episode of the Student Founder podcast. Welcome back to the Student Founder podcast, a platform created for student entrepreneurs, people interested and invested in business to come on and talk about their experiences in the startup realm. This podcast is also created to make Australia, or bring the technical talent and the talented entrepreneurs to the spotlight in Australia. I feel like they're underappreciated massively, and hopefully this podcast is able to guide, and put individuals where they belong. So I'm your host, Oliver Kukanik, PhD student by day, student founder by night. This episode is brought to you by Reece Labs, a software development company that I myself started along with a group of friends at the University of Melbourne. We offer economical software solutions in application development and dedicated resources to help you expand your software development teams. If this is something that you're interested in learning more about, make sure to visit our website at www.rofielabs.com.au or just hit me up on LinkedIn at Oliver Kukanik. Now, today we have a very interesting individual, someone who is the co-founder of a company that is called Spendable, a fintech startup focused on giving individuals with disabilities and elderly people more control of their money in a safe and supportive way. They do this by offering a Visa Debit Card and a dedicated application that can help or that can be used to track how much money is being spent, on what products, by who, and on what. Introducing to you the founder, Reece Miller.
Thanks for having me, Oliver. Appreciate it.
Hopefully that wasn't too choppy. We're still getting into it, right?
It's very full on, right? To kind of start off and hear someone speak about you like that. You normally try to be really humble and not speak about yourself at all. But thank you. Yeah.
No, that's all right. Like I said before we started the podcast, to get into things like this, you got to G yourself up before you start recording. So hopefully it's not too cringe as well for the audience. All good. Yeah, that's all right. So let's get into it. So originally, I had the opportunity of attending a Melbourne Accelerator Program, event, which is an accelerator through the university to help people like yourself who are running startups. And you had the opportunity to then present your idea, Spendable, to a relatively large crowd, all considering COVID and everything like that. So I didn't get a chance to speak to you on the day, but eventually we're able to link up because of good old LinkedIn and such things. And now you're here. So, I guess for the audiences and myself also included, let's get to know you, let's get to know you a little bit. So what's your background, right? So I guess we've read up a little bit about you, of course, bit of, LinkedIn stalking and such things. Also had a brief conversation with you before this, but, footy player, science student turns fintech founder. So how does that all work? There's a bit of differences. Two are similar, one's different. How did that all work?
I don't think I don't know. I think most entrepreneurs, right, are very atypical in what they go through, sort of thing. I think if you want to talk about careers, right back to when I was 20, I was milking cows up in northern Victoria. Right. 21, had a gap year. Went over to America, did some salmon fishing in Alaska. Entrepreneurs just seek out adventure, and they seek out this kind of different way, and we just kind of challenge things a little bit as well. And
Definitely.
So I'm not talking for every one of them as well, sort of thing, but I know certainly for me it was just very hard to kind of sit still and kind of get stuck into something as well. So right. Certainly a big diverse thing in terms of what we're doing, and so it was I still struggle to understand how I got to where I am today, but
it's always a bit like that, isn't it? You always have the I don't really feel like I belong here. Imposter syndrome kind of thing.
It's not so much the imposter syndrome. I actually think more so it's you look back and you kind of go so some people look at a goal 7 years ahead of them and they go, there's here to there and there's a path, and then people like, I don't know, even just like myself and like our head of sales always says it. He's like, you just sell the step, right? Like it's just like, you're not worrying about 7 years ahead. You're not worrying about what the path is. You're just like next step. And so, you know, that's all life was, right? It's just like, what's my next step going to be, as opposed to like, what is like, you know, get a house, do this, do that. Like, you know, be an exec at a company or whatever sort of thing. Like it's not, so you kind of just, I think you end up basically just, chasing little steps, as opposed to being like, there's a big career kind of trajectory for me here or anything like that.
That's insightful. So I guess like, you know, you mentioned that you were, you know, you used to work on a farm, right? Yeah. Was that before you went to university?
So that was actually that would have been my first job, like serious job outside of like high school. Job. So I finished high school, and Dad's from up that way, up near Shepparton Way sort of thing. Nice, and I was with one of his friends. One of his friends had a dairy farm, and he's like, why don't you go do that for a little bit of summer? And I was like, like bit of hard work, wouldn't hurt sort of thing. I loved it because I could just drive quad bikes around all day and drive tractors, and and it was pretty free. Like, you know, I was, you know, always born in northern Melbourne, and so I was like, certainly nice to kind of like go back, be a bit sort of just chilled out about everything, you know. Absolutely. No traffic lights in a city and all that sort of stuff. So
interesting. So I guess like after you had that experience, you would have developed quite a bit of fortitude and resilience in a career like that, just as a first job. I feel like probably a lot of young people, the typical and canonical job is like, you know, I stock shelves at Woolies or something. But farmers, you know, it's a hard job. It can be a hard job. You know? And
I looked at these people that I was working for, and like, so, and I probably weren't. Yeah, that's it, right? Like, I think, you know, like milking cows was one of those things where I was just like, they need to be milked every day, so you can't be sick and you can't be into this and all that sort of stuff. And and part of it was that, you know, the ones that I worked for was just a family size thing, but they were scaling out a fair bit, so they were exhausted, and they were just like, you know, they had the son that was about to take over, and it was just like, you know, the son was trying to bring a new way of things, and then they had the change management resistance and all that sort of stuff. I learned quite a lot, but
a bit about management and things.
Exactly, right, sort of thing. But then just the as I said, like, I think just you pick up from that was just work ethic, right? These people just like were superhuman in what they could do, and then like it kind of drove you, right? Like I was like I did not want to miss the 4:45 wake up. I was like, I did not want to be the idiot that slept in. I was like, nah, like I was just always about it, because it was just like not one-upping, but just like you did not want to disappoint sort of thing, right?
Yeah, so it got you in a good habit, good mindset before you started, I guess, your academic journey.
Yeah, right? Correct. That's right, sort of thing. So
So then teeing up into that, like, you know, what did you study in university?
So I did just a health science degree. So went to RMIT
with the intention of.
Yeah, with the intention. So it was like osteopathy, physiotherapy, something like that sort of thing. Finishing up in that, but that was like, you know, you make that decision when you're like 16 or 17.
Sure.
And then you kind of get to like 20, 21, you live in the real world for a bit.
Absolutely,
and you're like, holy shit, what have I, like, you know, like.
I mean, it's an interesting system, you know, like we're expected to, you know, figure out what we want at such a young age. And then most people just get into uni because it's the pathway, it's the narrative that we all follow. And they realize sooner or later that, you know, the things that they actually like, some of them don't ever realize until they're older. But
exactly right, sort of thing.
I guess you got to try new things.
100%. So. I think the when I was going through uni, when I was first starting, it was like the transition towards like the Melbourne model and that sort of like broadness of degrees. So there was kind of a fight from this, like all these people that had just kind of started uni or were already doing uni or had brothers or sisters that had been to uni, that they wanted to do degrees that specialized them in something. And so, and then, you know, how kind of wrong that opinion was only just like very, you know, it's only evident to me now sort of thing, right? That I'd gone 5 years into a degree that I'd never really kind of used tangibly sort of thing. Intangibly, I could be like, there's so many things that I learned, right? But, you know.
Absolutely. I think, in particular with maybe the business you started, right? Like that's kind of healthcare related in some way or another because of the, you know, the relationship with the National Disability Insurance Scheme and such things, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So you would have definitely learned a little bit about there in terms of technical skills. But then I guess the question I have is like, you know, coming from that, you know, what was osteopathy? Like field, right? Like going then and, you know, transitioning into something like what you're doing now. It's a completely different industry, different sector. How was the transition?
So where I am now is kind of like, it's like a 7-year journey rather than like, you know, Spendable started, you know, 18 months ago, 20 months ago sort of thing. But, you know, the problem was really evident when we started, well, not evident, but like it was developed as a result of, you know, we started Support Your Way, which is a disability services company. when I was like 21. So I just come back from my gap year. I was you know, me and a mate of mine who's, you know, Luke Davies in a wheelchair, great disability advocate, you know, one of the most underutilized talents in Australia. And, you know, was looking for work and looking to do something. And, you know, we were seeing the NDIS come in and we went, well, why don't we just start a business together? And so we started Support Your Way together, and you know, and just learnt a ton. I think, you know, I always go on about the 70-20-10 rule.
Absolutely.
Just and
maybe just describe it for the audience.
Yeah, so 70-20-10. Like, you know, I always sort of my team will smash me about this, but yeah, it's always about like, you know, so it's the idea that when you learn like in different mediums, right? So 10% of what you learn is like from people kind of telling you, like they say like, you know, you should do this because of this, and you kind of have to learn it that way. 20% is like you learning off like another person's experience. So that's like when someone goes, yeah, I got this mortgage because, and it was like the best mortgage for me. And then you go, oh, maybe I'll research that mortgage. And it turns out it's the same thing as you. So it's like group learning, so peer-to-peer learning. Yeah. And then 70% of what you do is just like bumps, bruises, and getting in the practical, right? It's just like, you know, you start a business, you have no idea how to lodge a tax return, you have no idea how to do a BAS, and you're just like, geez, I need to do these things because the government's coming for me, right? And so you like, just learn how to do it, right? Like, you know, you can read about as much as you want on the ATO website. Nothing prepares you for like doing the first one sort of thing. Yeah. So
I mean, most people, they have this saying, it's like, I'm not fearful of anything except, of course, of the government and tax man.
Yeah. You know? And they're not as scary as everyone thinks as well.
As long as you follow the rules.
Yeah, well, that's it, right? Well, it's you know, and it's about like, you know, doing the right thing, and you know, even if you are like, I won't take a position for the government, right? But yeah, like, you know, like just act in good faith, right? Sort of thing. And then, you know, if you do something wrong and you're not negligent, but you're just you're ignorant to it, then, you know, be prepared. Just be prepared, like, to remedy it. And I think that's all anyone wants, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess like when you were talking about this, that rule that you just explained, the 70-20 rule.
Yeah.
You're talking about, the boys are going to get me, right? Like,
are
you talking about the footy boys? Is that
no, the team. The team downstairs, like, you know, so when we work together, like, we'll talk about customers, and we'll talk about users, and we'll talk about other people that we speak to or stakeholders or whatever. And, you know, we spend a lot of time trying to convince people in the 10 and be like, and especially a solution like Spendable, we were like, we ripped up the way debit cards are done, threw it on the ground and said, like, do it our way, right, sort of thing. So it's like, you know, no longer work like a normal debit card. So we have to re-educate people. And people are so scared of that, right? They're so scared of re-educating because you're stuck in this 10. But once you throw them in the 70, you know, 30 days down the track, it's like they look back and they go, holy shit, like, why wasn't I doing this before? And that you can say that's like really true about anything, about a lot of things, you know, like, you know, switching bank accounts, switching, you know, switching schools, like, you know, switching jobs, whatever sort of thing. You can be so terrified on that first day, and then you get 30 days. Like, you really should reserve judgment for like 30 days in. You've given it like a really solid crack, and you're like, okay, I've actually like knocked a few things off here, and I'm actually a lot more confident than I can be, right?
Absolutely.
Nice.
So I guess like, you know, I like we were having a conversation before, you said you like, you know, kind of participating in a range of things that involve teams, right? So, you know, you like your sports, you like your business, such things. And I was wondering, like, in terms of finding the right team, right? Like, I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs out there, they kind of go into the space alone, and then eventually expand out, try to find some technical experts involved and get them part of the business as a business partner, right? So in terms of like, you know, building that dynamic with someone, how important is finding the right business partner, and how do you think you can effectively find the right business partners?
It is a gut feel and a gamble, literally, like cuts down to that, because, you know, you are basically saying like, all right, we're going to be, you know, we're going to go into this. It can go really, really well, or it can go really, really shitty. And like, either way, like, we're kind of in it, and we've got, and especially when you deal in equity, it's like, we have different kinds of shitty, right? So like, you've got, you know, like, so you can be a day 1 founder or a day 100 founder, you know, two different like places on the sort of equity table, right? And then, you know, day 1 could be a director, which means they hold all the directors' risk. So it's just like, it's very, there's no rhyme or rhythm to it. It's just like, you know, you go, well, all right, have I got everything to align as well as I can? And as I said, once again, just get in that 70, and just as soon as you can get out of like the whole kind of like, you know, get out of this idea of like, oh, I'm going to plan it with these people. I'm going to have agreements. I'm going to have all of these things like
shareholder agreements.
Yeah, they like, you know, they slow you up if you do have a conflict. So you're better off just like trying to pick the right person, work with them, have trial periods, do whatever you got to do.
Yeah, I think like in that topic, like discussing equity and things like that with business partners that you're bringing on board. If you've already started a company and you've put in quite a substantial amount of work before bringing in partners, that's a hard conversation to have, you know, like if you've never had it before.
Yeah, definitely.
So like, what was that like, you know, when you started bringing people in, talking about equity, which is something that people don't really like, you know, money's involved and it's a bit awkward, you know what I mean?
I think equity as well, like equity to say a CTO or to something like that, or like your head of product or whatever is, they're not finance people either. And like, I was not a finance person either. Right. And so like, I was like, oh yeah, like this is all good. But as you kind of like pull the string of like what equity is and dilution, and you put all these things, and you kind of go, well, if this is a venture backed business, and you know we're trying to go for $100 million exit or something like that, the decisions you kind of make up front are very crucial to like whether you lose $10 million at the back end or something like that, right? Yeah. And I think it's really, really hard as a founder, especially a day one founder, to have that conversation with the person who's like, say, a day 100 or a day, like even if you're bringing in a CTO like 3 years down the track or something like that, it's a really hard kind of opportunity to then sort of go, well, you know, what is this person bringing to the business? And often a lot of the times the discussion is around, oh, I want a percentage, you know, like I want 10%. And it's actually really got to, you know, like it's really important to kind of go back to like what the value is. You go, well, if I give you 10% over 4 years, for example, right, at a business is worth like, you know, $10 million. You know, let's say you've got 10% of $10 million over 4 years or whatever. You're effectively like paying that person, you know, that's $1 million, right? Sort of thing, you know, and over 4 years, right? Like, and so you're sort of going, well, they're probably getting a wage. They're probably getting like you know, and that's part of their ESOP or something like that. So you kind of have to look back at like, okay, well, take the percentage amount is like the trophy, right? The value is the value, right? It's like, it's like, and you know, a lot of times if you go in there asking for an equity amount, you've got to over deliver. And a lot of people, and that's where people get pissed off, is because you don't over deliver. And then that person's head, like you're hemmed in by what talent you can bring on later on, sort of thing as well. So definitely. I think it's very crucial up front, and to kind of go, well, and the other thing as well, which I've only kind of just, and it's a hard thing to sort of come to terms with as well, is that the company is often the founder journey, right? And the ones that come along, even though they might say like, yeah, like I'm crucial to this part and they're fully crucial to that part, you know, they are not really, you know, the journey is with the people that are like there's the founder sort of, that original sort of founder, what they call founder growth, right? Yeah. You know, where like everyone in a business is there for a time, the founder kind of goes through, right? And so you kind of have to make that decision as to whether, you know, if they're part of a founding team that's going to go through from here to here, and the key to that is that they're going to learn rapidly and deploy and also step down and move into different roles that are responsible for, like, that are applicable to them, or are they going to be a founder that's great at your stage as well, sort of thing. And so you know, it's just, it has so many variables. It's not a science. It's like all over the place. It's the shittest conversation to have. Absolutely, because you know, like, that's
why we're talking about it right now. Bit of advice for everyone.
It's super hard. And I think the hard thing as well is if you're the first founder in, you know, like you get diluted by it, like investors. Your investors often have anti-dilution. All of your staff want an ESOP, everyone, like, and everyone's kind of coming to you, and you're feeling this, you have this like part, like this people tell you not to do it, right? But the business is your identity. I don't know if anyone who does not agree with that. They tell you that they don't, but I'm telling you, the business is your identity, right? You've done this, like you want this to, like, you will, it's like, part of who you are. Yeah, and so
you build it into your character.
Correct.
Because you've got to believe it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the way to really believe it is like fortify it into your personality.
Yeah.
Character.
Like, trust me, man. If you're not speaking about it at the pub at like 3 a.m. when someone asks you what you do, like, and you're not speaking to them for an hour about it, like, are you as passionate about it? Like, maybe not, right?
Yeah, it's a good point. And so you need that.
Yeah,
you know, like, people underestimate that power of the passion.
Yeah.
You know, like, if you have the passion, it's like you can make, you know, quite substantial things work out, even though people might not think they work out.
Exactly right. Yeah. And that's it. And like, the passion kind of gets you from here to 5 years. And then whatever happens in between is like, you know, nobody knows, right? But the passion is the one that goes, well, holy shit, we're down to our last 10, like we're down to our last $5,000, right?
I was going to say, it's almost
we're not going to pay any money. Like we've got no money, we've got no customers, we've got nothing this. And you just go, well, I know this is a good idea. I know it's going to kick off. I'm going to throw another $50,000 into this, and I'm going to do and it is just you keep loading up red, right? And you just keep spinning the roulette table, that's it sort of thing. And it becomes almost an addiction, but
it's almost a coping mechanism. Like, you got to convince yourself that everything's good.
Yeah, well, everything's all right. Don't worry. Yeah. And then like it often is, right? Like we're so privileged here, like in Australia. Absolutely, so like it often works out, and so you can take those massive risks, like worst comes to worst, like like all of a sudden I'm unsettling for a bit, got a bit of depression for a bit, and I'll go work another job or whatever. But like you're not down and out. Like I got your parents are nice and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
So
you're not struggling on the street for food.
No, exactly right, sort of thing. So it's never boom or bust, but you're there's relative boom or bust, and you're like, geez, we're gonna give it a crack. But,
I guess speaking about risks, then like any startup, for example, has its associated risks with it, and that's something that you as a founder or someone involved in the business have to validate and say whether or not you're willing to undergo that. So running a business is it's full of different obstacles because of that. So let's talk a little bit about the obstacles that you face running your business Spendable, I guess, or even just like being a founder yourself, right? So we'll break it up. First start with like business obstacles. So let's start, like, I remember we had a conversation when we originally met. You're talking about your previous startup that you worked on, which is Support Your Way, right? So you would have learned a lot during that initial phase, stage and experience, so, what were some of the things that you learned during that initial, startup?
Yeah, definitely. The biggest lesson I learned was micromanagement is a shocking thing to do in any business.
In what way? Just elaborate.
Oh man. So like you would just often all of the time you go, and this is a founder thing as well, to go, well, I'm the new person. Like I'm the big dog, right? So I'm going to take all the risk. I'm going to do all this. Like all the policies will revolve around me. I'll have my name on everything, and I'll be the only one that holds a credit card, and I'll be, all these things, right? And then everyone has to keep coming to you. So if you scale out, like everyone comes to you, and you only have like enough bandwidth to answer like 40 emails a day, right? Absolutely. Sort of thing. And so if every email, and then as things get more complex and all that sort of stuff, you just hit this saturation point, and you're just like, well. And then you
can't be done.
Yeah, well, you actually, we got to 3.5 years in, and we just had to untangle all of that. And we spent a whole year just like going nowhere because we had to like build out processes. We had to build everything out that was completely independent of me. So
just your entire business pipeline, essentially.
Correct. Yeah. So like, and it was all good because the prototype was me, and we found out where the breakages were, right, sort of thing. But it sucked because I was just like, holy shit, I'm doing 60, 70 hour weeks in a business that's like, doing like, and we're not going anywhere, right? So one of those, like, that was a big lesson, like, just to go, well, okay, not everything has to be quality controlled by me. Not everything has to be kind of like done by that. And to get like smart enough people that they go, well, there's two things about it. Give them the chance to make their own mistakes and just go, well, it can't be as bad. Like, as long as it's not like a $50,000 or a fatal mistake or something like that sort of thing. It can't be that bad sort of stuff.
Of course. I mean, like failure is a part of the development. Right?
Exactly.
So, especially for your staff.
Like
to have the trust in your staff members to make a, I guess an incorrect decision, it'll help them develop as individuals, make them better employees.
Exactly right. So
especially if you deal with it the right way. Like if you micromanage and you're just like, super intense with your staff, they're probably not going to stick around, and then you're wasting time on improving someone that's not even going to be around.
Exactly right. So. But you're actually not improving them that much either, right? Like it's and like I'm not like, you're not the one that's improving the staff member. It's really the environment and how they attack the environment sort of thing, right? So I suppose like getting smart about that and going, well, okay, there's processes that are here. If I do it and it's going to take me 20 minutes and it's going to take that person 2 hours, they just got to learn that, you just have to allocate your time and realize that the time scales with their experience. And that's a really, really good thing. And as I said, I wish I had that clarity when I was 22 and I was like setting up all these processes and, getting us registered for the NDIS and doing all that stuff, because it's just like, it would have been like really, really cool because I would be like, oh yeah, I've got like, this manager's sick. And so we just, we can, put him out, but like everything had to kind of come through me and then kind of come through the managers. And it's just like, it wasn't it was not there was a risky thing. Like,
absolutely.
Because if I died or got sick or something like that, like
business falls over.
That's right. So
fair enough. I guess there's another like concept talking about this, like that you probably would have experienced yourself, and it's too much time planning. You should have been working more.
Oh man,
did you ever experience something like that?
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like that's just something that's universally experienced by any startup founder.
Yeah, unfortunately, like this is one of those ones that you just have to burn your fingers on, and then you'll learn the lesson. But
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't tell you. Like I've written like 5 business plans, I reckon, sort of thing, and like across like 2 businesses. I don't think anybody has read one of them like any more than maybe like a glance. And I was like, I would spend fucking 20 hours on these things, right? And I did not execute any of those things. Yeah, and it was totally successful between A and B, right? But yeah, so like that was, I don't know, like that for me is just like, you know, we now have a rule. It's like anything that's a planning document is just like no more than 20 minutes. It's just like, if this is not like
in and out, and then just like straight to the practical implementation.
Correct. Right? Yeah. You know, give it a go, get in people's hands, like see what happens there, sort of thing. But absolutely. Like, I've seen people like set up digital, like, digital channels and all this sort of stuff. And we've got to optimize our onboarding and all this sort of shit. And you're like, it's like get in people's hands and like see what, you know.
Just trial it.
Yeah.
Just trial it. And if it doesn't work, like go through an iterative process.
Correct.
Make improvements slowly. It's like anything. It's like developing, you know, probably you would have experienced it developing the app itself.
Oh man. You know, like
definitely. You can't just say, I want it to be perfect the first time, and then you create the initial plan and expect for things to just work out. Yeah, it's never how it works.
No, definitely not. Man.
Pretty much in anything in life, like nothing ever goes directly as planned.
Oh, exactly right. So I think the big thing is there's so many assumptions and hypotheses in everything that you just like, and they're just the variables, right? And so you never get the variables right, and that's the key thing. Like the variables are never right. You need to get the data and then get the data to then form your decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess like we had an initial briefing about how you actually went about developing your app for your original company, Support LA, right? So it's a bit of a funny story, and I think a lot of people will appreciate it because there's a big lesson to learn.
Oh man, is there ever?
There's a big lesson to learn.
Yeah. So it wasn't a scarring experience. I think it was like there was 2 things to it. Like it was
character development.
Yeah, it was the you get to learn the lessons, right, sort of thing, and that's a massive thing, right? Yeah. But we initially were building this marketplace for Support Your Way, connect support workers to people with disability. There's already 3 of them in the market, and I shouldn't have done it anyway, sort of thing. But there's like, there's Hire Up, there's Mabel, there's whatever, right? Sort of thing. And there's about 10 others that were trying to do the same thing at the same time. So we built this thing. We're like, at worst, it's going to be our CRM tool and all that sort of stuff. $250,000 later, it's like, it's not working. We built it at a design studio. We're like, fuck, like, what am I looking at here? Why is nothing working? There's typos all over it. I was expecting so much more. And I was like, surely we can do better. And I just, I desperately just wanted to like get myself in there, like, absolutely. I was just like, just give me the code, give me however I can change this. I just want to change it. And we just, I think that was the big thing is that, I learned that like, unless you're hands on with the quality and all that sort of stuff, you're like, you get left behind sort of thing. Yeah. And you just leave too much. Like there's just too many assumptions between what's in your head and what the developer's going to have. And so, if you leave those variables out, you're like far out. So,
I love how nonchalant you were about like
it's a lot of money, man.
$200,000 we burnt. This, that, and the other. Anyway, how are you? But like I guess talking on that because it's okay to make mistakes, even if it is a financial mistake. You would have recovered the money somehow in a different way in the future anyway. But in that iterative process that you were going through, what do you think some of the fundamental flaws were in the development? Do you think it was the fact that the development team you're working with, they didn't have you involved enough in the project?
Right?
Because you yourself are not a technical expert in development.
No, definitely not, sort of thing. So like I was coming from like I'd done the CS50 from like the computer science one from Harvard, the free online one and all that sort of shit, and I'd done a bit of like SQL.
I'd done basically a fully fledged pro.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, I know what 1 and 0 does, right, sort of thing. So I was like, but like extrapolating that into like complex code was like, it was not my thing, right? I'm like a point and do, right? But classic product manager sort of thing. Absolutely. But I think that it was like, we had like 3 meetings. They were like, let us go off and do this thing. They came back with like a Figma prototype, like set of frames or whatever sort of thing. And we were like, yeah, they kind of look all right. They, had like 20 frames or something like that.
Sure,
and then, after the 20, I was like, okay. And then we just didn't hear from them for like two or 3 months.
That's so odd.
And then we just kind of have like,
so you gave them the cash and they were here's the initial
prototype. It was all in installments, right? So it was like, oh yeah. So we kick, we get to this point, great B2B sales technique, right? Like they were like, just get to the next step, And
you just went along the pipipeline.
Yeah, pretty much.
You
and
really know
like
happening.
In retrospect now, I'm like, fuck, man, like I got done
we
there.
got done
right?
in, man.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so like kind of went along. It was pretty embarrassing to get to the end and just be like, fuck, man, like
not even happy with the product.
Yeah, like and like at the time I was burning about it. I was like, far out. I'm gonna sue these guys. Like this is definitely not.
I could imagine.
Like, all that sort of stuff.
We're all attached to money in some way or another.
Yeah,
but we work so hard for it.
It was actually the pride. It was like how the fuck did I get something that does not work? I'm like, this is so shitty. I was like, and because it wasn't working. Like, oh yeah, like, oh, okay, we'll do this. It's a change request, and we're like, fuck, like every time it's like $1,800 to change something.
Oh, so they were charging you like
yeah. So we're getting hit.
So every iteration it was more cash.
Correct. Yeah.
So they got you into their system.
Yeah.
They got you in the door. They'll probably like, oh, don't worry, economical price on the way in.
Yeah.
And then once you're in there, they're like, oh, there's premium.
You know what I mean? Exactly right. And then like they sort of went like, and then I think the final straw for us was that they handed it over. And we were like, this does not work. And they were like, yeah, okay, no worries. And then
here's $5,000 extra to just fix that glitch.
Yeah, well, no. The actual kicker was like they fucked up on their B2B with us, and they were like, oh, like we must have gone into some automation or whatever. And they were like, book it, like we've booked a session with you. And so it was a session with like their after sales, and their after sales was like, oh yeah, here's your insurance. Like, yeah, we can give you like. We do your hosting and we do your insurance for you. So like this insures you for like 40 hours of dev a month if you need to, like if for bug fixes and patches and stuff. And I was like looking
after the fact.
Yeah, and I was like looking at it, I'm like, holy shit, that price is really, really high. Yeah. Like number one, it was like $5,000 or something. And I was like, I know you guys are developing in like overseas somewhere or like doing whatever sort of thing. I know that it's just like a frontier in Australia. Yeah. And I was just like, that is a final straw. I do not want anything to do with this anymore. Sure. Give me the code, give me the databases or give me whatever sort of thing, and then just give me the AWS instance. And and at that point we'd started Spendable, and I was just like more passionate about that.
Absolutely.
And I was like, this is a plug puller at the moment. So
I think it's a lesson learned. Like during any development with any development company, whether it's local or overseas or a hybrid of both, it's like you need to be involved on a almost weekly basis with the development. You know what I mean? And like you said, we have previously had a conversation about it. If you can educate the client themselves on how to manage the development team coming from a non-technical background, that in itself is invaluable.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think the big thing for a founder, like if a founder was coming in and doing that and just being like, okay, I want to build an app, I have no idea where to start. Like I would I don't recommend going and learning it yourself because it's going to take too long.
It takes a long time.
You need to get to market is ASAP, right? Yeah. So get to market, acquire customers. That's number one rule, right? No code, low code if you can do it. Like, if you can learn.
Some things it's hard to go low code.
Exactly,
so you
right.
Get the developers, but in that process, be involved.
But also no code, low code can be, you can have attrition to your own ideas. So you can be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. And then you make a big chunk of progress. And then you're like a week later, you just like, you're not finding time to do those things.
Absolutely.
And so that's where sometimes like going to someone else and being like, yeah, no worries. Like this is it. So you can actually spend your, like if it's going to like, I build no code things like just for a laugh now, sort of thing. Like just for like.
Well, you
things
got a bit
to
of
do,
the
right?
skills with it, right?
Oh
so
yeah,
it's
definitely.
Still got a little bit of nuance, but it's nowhere near as technical as
but like what's the best use of my time as well is like, well, okay, if I do like a daily stand up with the dev team or something like that with our tech team, 15 minutes a day is so much better spent of my time than spending 8 hours of coding one day a week sort of thing. And so you get to kind of, I suppose, split your resources, especially as a founder, because customer acquisition is key. Marketing and brand is key.
Like it's so important.
The tech is good and the tech's important, but how are you
going to get clients? They're the ones who are giving you the money, right? So
exactly. So
if you can't get clients in the door, but you got to kill a product, it's like, well, you need to balance your,
exactly. Yeah.
So balance a bit.
So if you're a founder, if you can do both, I would just dive into tech as much as you can, get as hands on with it.
Absolutely.
I think it's not uncommon to have daily stand-ups with the tech team, and especially if you're working with a company, like if you outsource and if it's with you guys sort of thing as well.
Rofi Labs.
Ophie lads, but I was looking at the thing. But
that's the thing is like we kind of have that Australian presence where we have those communicators, we have those people mediating the projects throughout the entire process, so that the client understands what they're getting into every iteration.
Yeah, but I think like encouraging the founders to be like, well, if you want to be a $1 billion company or like $100 million company or whatever sort of thing, you're not going to get there if you're not like
you can be engaged,
fascinated by your product, right? Sort of thing. And so you should be like once a day, get an update, like at worst, let them ask you questions, because if they're not asking you questions, there's too much scope for like what the variables are going to be.
Definitely.
Whereas if you can be like, hey, and once you like learn how to like, if you know what a database, like if you know what an Excel spreadsheet looks like, you can pretty much guide anyone. Like get a subscription for Lucidchart and a Excel spreadsheet and say, this is how I want the tables to be set up, and this is how I want the this is what I expect each action to do. You click this button, that does this, and they'll code it in, and it's all pretty good sort of thing. But
absolutely,
yeah. So founders just have to like, they've got to be looking for like a conduit to go, well, okay, like, how do I get more involved with this product as well? Because like design studios, my experience, and that's personal. Some people might have great things, but unless like, actually, I'll give you the caveat to this though.
Yeah.
I think it was what's that? What is she, like a PT, but she does like Kayla, it's Nisus or whatever sort of thing, right? I think because she had such a big brand, right? She didn't need to be on the product, right? So she was like, big brand, you can do it, like you can just get a product and you've already done all the customer acquisition, right?
Yeah.
So the product means shit all. People are going to use it anyway, sort of thing, right? Yeah. So you're like, yep, okay, just do that. And I can do the MVP, and then you can just like get a tech team in and do all that sort of stuff, right? That's the only caveat. If you've got a big brand, get a design studio, man.
Absolutely.
If you're like, you got an idea that is so far out of the box that you're just trying to like prove to people that it works, you got to be fascinated by that product. You got to be like, right into that development.
Yeah. That's good. I guess like there's another, like just briefly before we move on to another topic, but there is another lesson, which is, do you wish that you would have spent less money validating the idea before you?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So like validating before, creating the fully fledged product. You could have probably got away with way less. And tested the product.
Exactly right. I think that for us, like, there was kind of too much scope to go, well, okay, MVP is actually all of these things. And whereas we really should have been like, and that was kind of like you're on the other end, like the other end of a sales thing, and the salesperson's like, oh, why don't you do this and why don't you do that, and why, we'd just been like, this is the critical function of what we're trying to do, and we'll do the rest on Excel spreadsheets, or we'll do the rest with like, printed out PDFs or whatever sort of thing. Like that's fine. And I wish we'd kind of like done that and validated it and gone, well, okay, we're really good at what's our core problem here is like connecting people with disability to, support workers, right?
Exactly.
Just focus on that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about all of the other auxiliary processes that we were trying to achieve as well. And so, like I think
so prioritize essentially.
Start at the problem and work outwards. Everything else can be like, you don't need a flashy onboarding. You don't need any of this sort of stuff. Like, your onboarding can be a Google form. Like that's all it has to be, right? Sort of thing.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Definitely. Yeah. If you can validate earlier and shorter. Yeah, because you're going to spend so much time validating, right? Like definitely. Everything you do is going to be validation. It's like
almost a third of the entire business at the start.
Oh yeah, pretty much, right?
If not more.
Yeah. So
that's interesting. All right, so I guess we've spoken a little bit about business obstacles that you would have faced through your previous experiences and such things, and how how they've helped you move on to spendable and such things. But personal obstacles, right? So you yourself are a founder, right? Yeah. And at some point you would have also, been working or, starting family, doing sports, other commitments, right? Yeah. So how do you balance your life, man?
There's a lot of years of not balancing it.
Yeah.
And
do you think it's necessary?
Definitely. Yeah. I think there's definitely, there's two ways of doing it, right? There was me in the last 2 years of just going, I can fit everything in, so I play cricket, I play footy, I water ski.
You said you were on a couple of committees as well.
Yeah, on like committees and things like that sort of stuff, and and that's on top of big weeks at work, and and then family time, like I'm married and all that sort of stuff, and you kind of like you're going through all of these things, and you're like, and you either go, I can do this at a sprint, and I can I'm just going to do this for 2 or 3 years and that's fine. And I think
the intention that eventually it will end.
Yeah, correct, right, sort of thing. So like, eventually you go, well, I've scaled my time out well, like it will end. But the thing to that is that your work shifts. So your work actually like decreases. So you'll hear like Jeff Bezos be like, oh, I get up at 8 and like, I have lunch, I have breakfast with my kids, and he's at that time, right? But I have no doubt that there was like times where he would
have been on the grind,
smashed sort of thing.
Absolutely, he probably didn't see his family for weeks and weeks at a time.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like Elon Musk, man's traveling around jets on a regular basis.
Yeah, and he might be the exception to the rule. I think like like not knowing him personally or anything like that sort of stuff. He like it may or may not be true, right? But like having sort of like been in that life as well. 2 years is max, man. Like you cannot sprint at a level. But admittedly, he I don't know what his extracurricular is either sort of thing. But like it's it's definitely it's hard to balance, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
You do certainly go through phases. I think like I'm lucky enough to have seen a sort of 6 years sort of business cycle, and starting one and then getting through and then kind of coming to that sort of nice sort of scaled spot and going, well, we're kind of there, and we've got the process, and we've got people, and you're not actually dealing with the people on the front line, and so what you do is a little bit less time sensitive and all that sort of stuff as well. Which is quite nice. But now we're back in it where it's like what you do is it's on the front line, like
exactly.
If you're not, but you just got to make the decision. Are you going to push through it, or are you going to be like everything else has to stop as well? So
there's definitely transitory sacrifices that are necessary, but they should surpass. Like you should overcome them eventually.
I think that, I don't know, just for me and for other people, I think as well, is you get this idea like just keeps clicking in your head, so that you're like, it would be miserable for me not to do this.
Yes,
so
it's
you're
an
like,
obsession.
So you're
like low-key obsessed.
Oh, not even low-key. You were just like, my wife got so sick of, like, we were in lockdown.
She's like, look, Reece, I'm concerned.
She's like, you've got to stop speaking out spendable. And it was just an idea, right? And I was like, she's like, I'm like, oh, we could do this and we could do this, and Visa cards, we could do that. And did you know that it does this? She's like, I don't care, but I'll listen, okay? But
it's like you're outing. You're I need to get this off my chest.
That's it. It was like our 1 hour of exercise in lockdown, right?
Interesting. I guess like speaking on this topic, one of my favorite books that I've ever read was called Deep Work by Cale Newport. Right? So that's a book that kind of explores this idea, or one of the ideas that are explored in the book is called attention residue. It's basically when a previous unfinished task impedes on your performance on the next task. I feel like this is something that people like yourself who are in those sprints, those ephemeral sprints, experience.
So
you've got so many different things on the list to do during the day that do you ever feel yourself, it's like a daily burnout almost, where you, like you said, you only have so much bandwidth that you can actually, like dedicate to a certain activity. So you do one task and then you need to go and do another task, but you didn't quite get to where you needed to be on the first task. It kind of is lingering in your mind during the second task. You know what I mean? This is something you experienced.
Oh, definitely. Like, so I think it's, there's, you refine it though, like further on down the track, you start to decide like what's crucial and what's actually not crucial. And you generally, a lot of problems solve themselves, right? So, technical problems don't solve themselves, but they're like, most people problems solve themselves. Like, you give someone a bad customer experience or something like that, you might be like, oh shit, I need to do everything I can do on a Sunday. And then you're like, they're already pissed off. All this stuff's happened. Like, let's put a proper response together and kind of go from there. And so, like same thing, like, you kind of then translate that into like, even today, like I was looking at today and I was like, there's all these things that I want to do. Man, I ran half an hour over having breakfast with a guy I used to work with at Support Your Way. And I like did a few of these things, and then like, and then I'm like, oh geez, like I get in the office and I'm, talking to staff a little bit more, like talking to the team more, and
behind the ball today.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you work and like, Zoom meetings are the hardest things right now, sort of thing, because you will be like working on something and you're like, oh shit, now I've got to like schedule a meeting, right? And then you get in the meeting, you've got you've got like 8 or 9 discussion points. You're like, okay, I've got 2 or 3 action items out of this. And then you're like, like, do I do the action items or do I do the things that I was working on before?
But then if you don't do them, you're like oh,
then
I got to make time for them elsewhere. And it's
exactly.
Maybe I should just get them out of the way.
Yeah, pretty much. So there's kind of two types of tasks for me. It's like, the stuff, the here and nows or the just in times, right?
Yeah.
So the here and now is like an email comes in, shoot back a reply ASAP. Email's been sitting it's been sitting in your thing for like 3 days, and you're like, you need to send them a reply. Just shoot them a reply, say, hey, I'll have a reply back by maybe Monday or something like that sort of thing, right? Sure. So like getting to that so that it does, you're right, like it knocks it off your sort of like your bandwidth and such. But and then you kind of have these like longer tasks. You're like, so like I'm sort of head of product, right, for Spendable, and so for a week and a half I was redesigning the UI, right, and so sort of doing that, I was like, I was like working, and then like you would like slot it in between all these things, but you actually flip your mindset. You go, well, the priority is this thing and everything else is encroaching on that. And then you actually kind of then, if you flip your mindset on that, you're in a meeting and you don't take action items on. You go, all right, if this has got to get done, you've got to do it. And then you've got to do it. And
you delegate a bit.
Exactly.
Use the resources that you have available.
Correct.
And focus on what you need to focus on.
But I think there's a 2-speed mindset to it. And it's deciding like what speed you're in at that time.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting stuff. All right. So we won't wrap up yet, but just move on to the final section, which is more about your company and just like the future of the company, right? And also just a little bit more about, maybe a little bit about, funding, right? Because it's always something people are interested in talking about, because, being a startup, if you want to grow fast, you need the money, right? So I have a question for you, which is, given your previous experience with your company where you're telling us that you burnt $200K developing an app that didn't have the most utility that you expected. How did you come out of that, go into a new business and get to the point where you were raising capital? Like, how did you actually raise capital for the second business?
So 2 things out of that. Number one, that was like a strong learning experience, right? Absolutely. I was like, cool. It's not, I'd say I probably lost 120, 130 on that. And like, keep in mind as well, it was 250 on cash on paper, but R&D grants and all that sort of stuff, it was like 140, 150 sort of thing. But we had a super strong balance sheet. We had no debt. We had nothing at support UA. And so it was like, part of doing this app was that it was actually in conjunction with sort of doing 2 or 3 digital projects. We were just quite lucky. We just got a recommendation for this. Like I was talking to someone about like how crappy the experience was with this dev company, and he explained to me how it worked, and he was like, this is what happens. Like, you got all these people, like these people, they set up a nice office. It's got, it's in a co-working space, and they do this and do that. And then they just have a tech team over in India or, Bangladesh and all that sort of stuff, which is totally fine. But I wish that they'd done it differently with me. That's the only thing. And because like, it was nice to have like a bit of a managed service on that.
So what would be the ideal setup in your mind?
Well, I just think the ideal is like they're coaching me to take it over, as opposed to then seeing it as like, because that's the, like, I don't care about paying a clip on like ongoing, like if someone if they introduce me to a relationship and I'm like, I've got to pay 10% or 20% or 30% on that relationship for X amount of time. If the outcome is worth 150%, why do I give a shit about that? That is business. That is like, that is all of it sort of thing.
It's all positive.
So, like, I think for me, it was like, well, we were like working with them, but the value was that like, we weren't going to get like 10%, like we were going to get like 10% of value, and they were just like, any of the value out of the app was like getting sucked up by them sort of thing. And I was like, every time I put stuff in, like if we need to put like a Stripe integration or something like that, it's just like, fuck, it was so much, right? So for me, it was like, the like how I would have a studio personally is it would be like, they coach you. You go in there, you say, I've got absolutely no fucking clue.
Just honesty.
Do you guys have any better ideas for me? You just go, you get in the 20 and you go, hey, this is our experience with because you might have worked across like 10 or 15, 20, 30 projects. This is our experience with these projects, not telling me like, this is how you should do it, because that is in the 10. And then you say, all right, here's this. And then get in the 70 as quick as possible, and encourage the founder to get in that, whatever capacity that is. But like, teach them to use Figma, teach them to use like, XD, wireframe things up. That's where like, if you, especially in app development, that's where the ideas start. Is like someone sketches something and they go, yeah, sweet. Well, encourage them to sketch, encourage them to do
it's like,
stuff, right?
It's the investment in the training,
Correct.
So like anything you do is like, it's more than just the, actually doing something like, we got to develop an app. It's more than just getting someone else to do it. It's like, if I could learn the skill to then teach, you know what I mean? Then that's sustainable. You're actually getting more than what you pay for almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly right. And then, talent is like, tech talent is really, really hard in Australia, right? Sort of thing. And, outsourcing overseas is not like, it is a super viable way of doing things.
Absolutely.
If you got a startup, like if we had internal tech,
most people do it.
Yeah,
there's that vulnerability. It's like, I can't afford a junior software developer in Australia.
Correct. And
100K.
And do they like, and I think the hard thing as well is like, they have this like really, really good wage and like they go like that, but like they haven't been in the practical very long, right? And so, you can have the best master's degree and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, unless they're coming to me saying like, oh, I've built these 10 things and these 10 things are really, really fucking cool. And I've fucked up these 15.
It's like, okay, now you've got a resume.
Yeah, that's it, sort of thing.
It's not just everybody got a university degree.
Yeah, these days, I don't care where someone gets a university degree from. Like, I care if like someone has, they've learnt off like, what is it, like Chi Academy or something like that sort of stuff, right? And like they've done that, and then they're like, I built 7 of my own websites.
They grind their way through it.
Yeah, like that's it, sort of thing. And they're like, oh, I don't generate the ideas, but I can work on them, right, sort of thing. And so that's often part of it as well. So
definitely,
and you just get diversified skills, right? Like you get like overseas, you can get like, full stack. You can get
there's a whole
Android,
pool of technical
iOS.
talent.
Yeah, exactly. So
and it's all there. It's all there for grabs.
Yeah. So
All right. So I guess I'll ask you another question, which is, what's the future for Spendable? It's a very broad question, but like, is there anything that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so we do. Yeah, we actually R&D a fair bit now, sort of thing. So
that's good.
Yeah, so we do like a couple of things, and this isn't speaking too far out, but we're sort of we're trying to get our tech into banks now. So what we do is off the back of a Visa prepaid card. We'd love to so a lot of our payment functionality, we'd love to just overlay that onto like a general, just like an everyday debit card. So it just sits on your account. So if you've got a disability, you can switch these features on. It works. On the flip side of that, we're actually doing a bit of blockchain stuff as well. Nice. So a lot of like bank-to-bank transfers and all that sort of stuff. So we're doing a lot of really kind of cool POCs around that sort of thing, and looking at not so much cryptocurrency, but using a blockchain.
Cryptocurrency is its own thing, right? Blockchain is a tech that backs it. Has different utilities more than just the currency, right? So security and things like that.
That's the main thing, right? It's like you don't have to actually put any money. Like the money can sit in my bank account, but if I can get the record up there, a bank that is completely independent of my bank could say, yep, I can see that. I'll make the money available in someone else's account.
Definitely.
Pay for it. It comes off my account. Or if people were on that sort of stuff. So so we're looking at like a lot of we've actually got a patent on something like that sort of thing.
Nice.
That
sounds exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is sort of thing. But patents are worthless sometimes. As well,
they can
right?
be. Yeah, of course.
So but stuff like that, like bank to bank transfers and making money available on people's cards and things like that is definitely stuff. But we're on a journey. We're just trying to hopefully in 5 years we've got our tech being used by 10 million people in the world with disability, right?
I hope so too.
That's our massive
thing. Definitely good
Mm.
intentions behind the business, actually helping out a good demographic of individuals. So it's really nice. All right. So but I guess before we wrap up the podcast, I always ask my guests this, and it's just something that I would canonically ask, but what's a last piece of advice that you'd like to give to the student entrepreneurs watching this episode of the Student Founder Podcast?
Last piece. I reckon I've thrown a few in there.
You definitely have.
Last piece is just, you need to get practical. You just have to just get into it, work on it. You can't show people an idea without having that, having the thing there. So nobody gets it. And don't spend time on fucking business plans and pitch decks. They mean nothing, okay? Don't spend any time and build a product. Get that in people's hands.
So less time planning, more time working.
Correct. Yeah, exactly right. So
that's great. All right. So we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for joining us today, Reece. Love your work with Spendable. Mm-hmm. It was a great conversation, very insightful, experience with your whole startup journey. So we at Rofi Labs and, the Student Founder Podcast really appreciate it. And I'm sure all the fans also watching appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Oliver. Appreciate it.
No worries. All right. So cheers. Yeah, that was this episode of the Student Founder Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe and follow us on all our socials. We'll also plug Reece's like application and also all his social media content as well. So if you liked this episode, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave some comments and give us some feedback. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.